Well, hello, everyone. I know we still have a minute. Kirsten, hi. It's nice to finally meet you in person, somewhat in person. Thanks for joining. Um, we're going to give folks time. We're a little early, but we wanted to welcome you all since we saw you waiting in the lobby. It's great to have you join us on this lovely, my goodness, is it Tuesday? I can't believe it's already the end of August. So lovely to have you all this evening on Tuesday. As we're waiting for folks, I'd love to hear a little bit. If you're not shy, feel free to join via audio or chat where folks are joining us from, and or how you heard about the event. We're trying to understand better how people are hearing about all these wonderful virtual speaker series. So if folks aren't shy, either speak up and I think you can unmute yourself, or if you want to put that in the chat where you're joining us from or how you might have heard about the event. I myself am joining you all from Pearl Harbor, which is where the park's office is. We're co-located with Pearl Harbor National Memorial, and we do have facilities on the naval base. So I am joining you all here tonight from Pearl Harbor, where some folks joining us from. Oh, I see some other folks here. Kelly, nice to have you join. Kelly's going to be one of our speakers in December and also at our book event in September. If folks want to find more information about that, it's on our website, mps.gov/HONO. Oh,
Christine,
uh-huh.
I can see Pearl Harbor from this picture, but I don't think I got your office included. My apologies. You're over behind you're behind the Arizona Memorial, and I can see the Arizona Memorial, but how do we know you're
Lovely. Thanks, Ned. Great. You heard about it from an email joining from Kaimuki. Wow, Cleveland, Ohio. Jeff, thank you for joining. I know it's late for you. Trip planning to Hawaii this fall. Great. Salt Lake. Ah, that's great, Angela. Thank you for joining us. Manoa, love it. Kathy, thank you, everybody, for sharing a little bit about yourself and joining us this evening. Well, we have a really full packed agenda with some wonderful panelists that I'm excited to introduce you to soon. I really do want to hand it to them because that's why you're here to hear directly from our wonderful panelists. So August is Korean, dedicated to the Korean POWs held at Honouliuli. It was the largest and longest used incarceration site in the islands at the time during World War II. And the majority of the POWs held there were conscripted laborers from countries like Korea, Okinawa, and certainly the Axis countries of Italy and Japan. So we don't know a lot about the Korean POWs there. And other speakers for this month is with the Center for Oral History at UH Manoa, Mary Daniko, and Daki Murabayashi. Unfortunately, due to family emergency, they had to cancel their talk Thursday. We will reschedule them, but they will be speaking directly to the research and work done with understanding who the Korean POWs were at Honouliuli. But we really want to bring this discussion to the present and make this history relevant. And so the park is investing in understanding kind of the local community interaction of Koreans in the community back then to the Korean POWs. But we're also partnering a lot with wonderful current organizations within the local Korean American community here in Hawaii. And I want opportunity for you all to learn exactly how we're partnering, learn a little bit about their organizations, and how you might join them as well and support some of their work. So with that, I'm going to introduce our four speakers. And what they're going to do is we're going to start with Chris, and they're going to pass the discussion on to each other, and then we'll end our time together with some Q&A as well for you folks to be able to ask them questions. So first off, in introductions is Christopher Bay. He is with the Center for Korean Studies at Manoa, and he is currently the director. He was born in Korea and adopted by an American family, and has been interested in the study of race and human variation, which drew him into Eastern Asian paleoanthropology and Eastern Asian prehistory. Following Chris will be Amanda Soyoon Chang. She is the president of the Hawaii Korean Cultural Center. She's an immigration lawyer in Honolulu, and as an attorney, she volunteers and serves as a court-appointed arbitrator for civil cases filed with the state of Hawaii. After Amanda, you'll be hearing from Edward Schultz, who is the immediate past president of the Korean American Foundation Hawaii. He is a retired UH professor who taught at Leeward, UH West Oahu, and Manoa, as well as Sogang University. He was also the director of the Center for Korean Studies and the dean of the School of Pacific and Asian Studies, assistant vice chancellor for international education and exchange, and also the interim chancellor of Hawaii Tokai International College. And rounding out the panel this evening will be David Suh, who is the president of the United Korean Association of Hawaii. He is from Korea and immigrated to Hawaii, having graduated from McKinley High School, UH Manoa, and the William S. Richardson School of Law. Guided by his Christian faith, David combines his professional expertise with a deep commitment to Korean community service and working passionately to preserve Korean American culture, traditions, and values for the benefit and enrichment of the entire community. So I'm excited to have you hear from all four of them. And so with that, I will hand it over to Chris to start us with our discussion.
Sure. Thank you very much, Christine, for the introductions. I want to thank you and your colleagues for inviting us as well to come speak. When I first heard about the internment camp, I heard from it about from an archaeological perspective and stuff. But then I realized the more I learned that there are actually a lot of Koreans based over there as well. So I became much more interested in it. So from my perspective, I'm currently the director of the Center for Korean Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. If you've ever spent any time on campus at Manoa, one of the things that you'll notice right away is that there's a very Asian-looking building on campus. It's one of the most iconic buildings that houses a Center for Korean Studies outside of the country of Korea, right? So it's really unique in terms of its architecture and structure. So next time you drive around Manoa campus and you come across that building, you'll know that our Center for Korean Studies is actually based in that building. So the building itself, our center is, takes a lot of pride in being the oldest center for Korean studies outside of Korea. So we originated way back in 1972. So a few years ago, we actually celebrated our 50th anniversary of our center. So we have the oldest Center for Korean Studies outside of Korea. And then the other major thing that we really like to take a lot of pride in is that we also have the largest Center for Korean Studies, where at any given moment, we may have between about 30 and 45 faculty members affiliated with our center. And what's interesting and what really distinguishes us from other universities, including much larger universities like Michigan and UCLA, Berkeley, is almost every single social sciences or humanities department, on Manoa campus will have some kind of representation in Korean studies. So either they'll have a faculty member that is affiliated with our Center for Korean Studies, or they will have a faculty member that teaches something related to Korea. And so we take great pride in, in being able to say that we have the oldest and the largest center for Korean studies. So the building itself, it's actually interesting because, the center itself started in 1972. And then I think probably Ned Schultz, who's in this room and is one of the speakers, he was actually a graduate student here in the 1970s. So he actually knows more about this history. But in 1974, they started to actually break ground to build the building that now houses our Center for Korean Studies. And the whole building itself took about 5 years to finish. So it was completed in December of 1979. There was a opening ceremony in early 1980 as a result of that. And I just want to point out that the building, when it was finished in 1979, the total cost of the building was about $1.8 million. Now that's chump change in today's world, right? When you talk about building architecture, structure and stuff from scratch. But what's interesting about that, the total cost is that 1/3 of that cost came from the state, right? The state of Hawaii. 1/3 of that cost came from the Korean government. And 1/3 of that cost also came from the local Korean community. So roughly equal numbers. So it's pretty interesting that, through community outreach, our Center for Korean Studies was able to talk to local members in the Korean community to be able to donate, to help build the structure as we know it today, right? So some of the things that we're really well known for is, our events. We have probably about 3 or 4 events every month. And, we also have a lot of donations over the decades, right? So we've received a lot of, donations related to materials related to Korean immigration history. As you may or may not be aware, the first Koreans to immigrate to the United States actually arrived in 1903 in Hawaii, right? And so we have a long history of Korean immigration here to the state of Hawaii. And so we have a lot of archival material that's stored, curated in our building. And what's interesting is that we probably have, I would say anywhere from 2 to 4 times a month, we have visitors. So either graduate students or senior faculty members who are interested in doing research and looking at these original archival documents related to Korean immigration history. And so they come from Korea, they come from the mainland. Some of them are local here as well. I think eventually you'll hear from Ducky Muribashi, who is one of our resident, leading scholar, on Korean immigration history, here in Hawaii. The other thing that we have is, we also have a lot of book collections as well in our building. And so, over the decades, we probably have a small library of about 10,000 books, which is pretty sizable. So we're talking to Hamilton Library now about how we can better connect with that, in terms of making our resources more readily available to people. So the building was finished in 1980. We take great pride in having the largest building of its kind. Other things that we really like to highlight is we have an active publication series. And so we have one of the oldest journals called Korean Studies in the field. And we also have a book series called Hawaii Studies on Korea. Again, Ned Schultz is in the room. He also served as a former editor of these book series and journal as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention about the archival materials is many people, not many people outside of Hawaii and outside of Korea actually realize that Lee Seung-man, the first president of the Republic of Korea, actually spent about 30 years here in Hawaii off and on. And so he was very, very heavily involved with the local Korean community here. And so my guess is the other speakers tonight may probably want to talk about, his contributions to life in Hawaii for Koreans and the development and stuff. But we also have a lot of people that want to see those original documents related to, the first president of the Republic of Korea that we have curated in our building as well. So as I mentioned, one of the major research themes that we have is Korean immigration to Hawaii, but we have a lot of documents, original documents, and a lot of literature on North Korea. Unification, obviously, is another major area that is of great interest to a lot of people. So we have a lot of documents related to that, archival materials as well. One of the things that really separates us from other area centers, if you're not familiar with the University of Hawaii at Manoa, the School of Pacific and Island Studies, it actually used to be a school, independent school, that had 8 area centers. So you've got Chinese studies, Japanese studies, Korean studies, Okinawan studies, Southeast Asian studies, Philippine studies, South Asian studies, and Ned, you can correct me if I'm missing it. I think I got them all. But in any case, there's a lot of area centers. Pacific Island Studies, obviously. So, but we are the biggest area center and the most active area center on campus out of all of the different area centers. So we also take great pride in that fact as well. But what's interesting is that the reason why Christine reached out to us is because we thought one of the areas that we really like to spend a lot of time focusing in on is public outreach, right? And so we've started discussions about maybe we can bring this to campus by maybe organizing some small conferences or workshops where we can have some undergraduate students and graduate students start doing some research on the internment camps and the history of the internment camp there, and more about Korean immigration history as well. And then we can turn that into more of a conference or a workshop where people in the local community would definitely be invited to not only attend but also participate as well, because a lot of the local Koreans here are going to have some kind of history and be able to relate to this Korean immigration history and to the history of the internment camps as well. So I think that pretty much covers the Center for Korean Studies, and I think from there I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Thank you, Professor Bay, introducing me, and also Chris. Actually, I serve as the president of Hawaii Korean Cultural Center, but nobody has ever visited Korean Cultural Center yet because there is none. Unlike Center for Korean Studies, we don't have a building yet, but we do have hopes and dreams to have a cultural center. Hawaii is known for multinationals, ethnic backgrounds living together. And we have a Japanese cultural center, Chinese Cultural Center, and Filipino Cultural Center, as well as Okinawan Cultural Center. Okinawa is no longer an independent nation since it was occupied by Japanese, just like how Korea was once. But Okinawans, before they became part of Japan, came to Hawaii, and now they have a Okinawan Cultural Center in Waipio, Gentry. And in fact, they are having their well-known, the most famous festival, Okinawan Festival. That's one of the most famous ethnic festivals in the island. I think they're doing it this year at Convention Center this weekend, in fact. The Korean Culture Center, Hawaii Korean Culture Center, who have a mission to open a center to serve two purposes. One is to share Korean language and culture history with everybody in Hawaii, as well as visiting. So it entails a museum that will feature Korea and Hawaii combined history. We have two very important history combining Korea and Hawaii. As you well know, actually, Dr. Schultz must know better than me, so I shouldn't speak up as an expert or anything like that. But Korea has about 5,000 years of history. History just means that we have a written a story about a nation. Korea has 5,000 years, and we're not going to be able to feature 5,000 years of Korean history in this Hawaii Korean Cultural Center, but we will feature two important things that's connecting Korea and Hawaii. One is briefly touched by Professor Bay. Korean immigration to the U.S. started in 1903 by landing in Hawaii in Honouliuli shore, and we would like to feature Korean immigration to the U.S. through Hawaiian shore. That would be immigration history. And second one is Korea was once occupied by Japan for 35 years, from 1910 to 1945. And independence movement of Korean was mainly provisional government was in Shanghai, but all the funds and money to operate the provisional government of Korea in Shanghai was actually all stemming from Hawaii, where all these immigrants who came to the Hawaiian shore as early immigrants to Hawaii, starting from 1903, actually were the ones who sent their hard-earned money to Shanghai I was reading that it was about $6 million way back over 100 years ago. I don't know, I'm not an economist, but $6 million today to me is a big amount. You can only imagine 120 years ago, how 100 to 120 years ago, how much that may mean at that point when your daily salary is not even $1. You work hard all day, sunrise to sunset, you earn 76 cents. And 70% of their earnings, I was told by Korean immigrants back then, was sent to Shanghai to work on independence movement to get their sovereignty back. So Korean Hawaii history is really dynamic in that the very existence of at least South Korea is really tied to Hawaii. And Dr. Bays just talked about Syngman Rhee, the first Korean president. He spent over 30 years in Hawaii, and he was one of the main independence movement patriot from Korea, worked very hard to fight for the Korean independence. And Hawaii is the center of the Korean independence movement in the early turn of the century in 1900s. So Hawaii Korean Culture Center will have a museum focusing on those two important history tying Korea and Hawaii, which is early Korean immigration and also Korean independence movement that was happening in Hawaii. So we would like to share that 20th century history tying Korea and Hawaii to people of Hawaii. So Korean Culture Center is not just for Koreans or Korean Americans, but rather for anyone who is interested in learning about Korea and Hawaii and how the history intertwined in Hawaii. So a second part of Hawaii Korean Culture Center is to teach Korean language and history and heritage and culture to everyone. It's not just for Koreans or Korean Americans living in Hawaii, but anyone who's interested in Korea in terms of their language. I was told that Korean language, written and written language system is the most scientific according to linguists in the world. So we would like to have a school focusing on teaching Korean language and heritage and history. So our vision for the school is going to be in the morning, we're going to be offering, we call it Senior Citizens Academy. We're focusing on Korean elderly in Hawaii coming to our Hawaii Korean Culture Center to learn about English, some yoga, some taekwondo, whatever they're going to be doing as a senior academy from 8 to 12. And from 1 to 5:30, children who are finishing their school can come to learn after school care / academy about Korea for children's, K to 12. And after 5:30, anyone who's involved in Korean community or public service can come and meet at that same location, same space will be used for senior citizens in the morning and K to 12 in the afternoons, and for the evenings for anyone who may be in need of any type of meeting rooms or lecture rooms and classrooms and etc. So those are the two main goals that we have that we're going to be offering. So Korean Culture Center in Hawaii will not only will be used by Koreans or Korean Americans, but anyone who lives here, who is visiting here. We have millions of people visiting from all over the world to see Hawaii. And if they're ever interested in how Korea and Hawaii are intertwined with the history, they can come and learn. So those are the two main focus. Now, because we don't have the center, what we are doing to get the center, we were incorporated as a nonprofit entity in Hawaii in 2007. So it's been about this July was exactly 18 years. So we bought 10 years ago a building on Kalihi Street, 3059 and 3075 Kalihi Street up in the Kalihi Valley, a 2-story building. Now that building, unfortunately, it cannot be used as a Korean Cultural Center because we owe most of our money is in mortgage. So we have to rent the place out to pay for our mortgage at this point. So we're doing 2 annual fundraising events to possibly pay off the mortgage and use that building as our Hawaii Korean Culture Center, or sell that property and then buy more suitable and bigger a space so that we can accomplish those 2 missions that we have in mind. So one is during springtime in April, we have a golf tournament, and in the fall, which is coming up in November, we have a Taste of Korea. I'm not sure whether some of you may have attended this event. We started in 2014. The Taste of Korea is basically a food tasting event with a mission. The mission is to raise money to build a Korean Culture Center in Hawaii. And what's interesting about the Taste of Korea is that we're not just serving traditional Korean food, but we are asking local restaurants to come and offer their cuisine, kind of having a kind of fusion Korean as well. For example, MW is a Pacific Rim cuisine. If they were to make butterfish misoyaki, which is kind of like Japanese cuisine, but they will use bean paste, that's doenjang, which is a Korean soybean paste. Not as sweet as Japanese miso, but they would use that ingredient that's very prominent and unique Korean ingredient to make their food, for example. And we have a pig and a lady who's not Korean at all. They're French influenced Vietnamese cuisine, but they will come and they will present a cuisine that is using Korean ingredient to tweak it so that they would make a fusion Korean as well as a very authentic Korean restaurant like Hangang or Chogajip are one very popular, well-known authentic Korean restaurants. And they would come and they will offer authentic Korean cuisine as well. So Taste of Korea is going to be held on Friday, November 21st. November 21st is 1 week before, the Friday before Thanksgiving this year. So we always host the Taste of Korea in November because, as you may know, November 22nd is the National Kimchi Day. Did you know that? We have like pretzel day and pizza day, pasta day. Americans have so many different types of special days, but the Kimchi Day is a National Kimchi Day, and Virginia celebrates it, California celebrates it, and Hawaii also has chosen 22nd of November as the National Kimchi Day. So we also celebrate very famous and well-known representative food of Korea, which is kimchi. So we will have a kimchi making demonstration. That's what we had last year. And this year, we're hoping to have something to celebrate kimchi. So you got to come and check it out. It's going to be in the evening, 6 to 9 at the Honouliuli Country Club in Salt Lake, not too far from everybody, with free parking. In any event, we have about 20 to 24 different types of foods to taste, all you can taste. And we also have all you can taste Korean liquor imported by Koha Foods. And we also offer Korean entertainment, traditional Korean dance to K-pop dancers to something Korean that's going to be featured on the stage. So we have a food, you have music and dance and Korean liquor. What more do you ask, right? So that's happening on November 22nd at Honolulu Country Club. So hopefully we will be able to open a Hawaii Korean Culture Center in Hawaii when everybody can come and learn and join us to learn more about Korea and to learn more about Korea and Hawaii together as partners of Korean culture, showcasing Korean culture. And you can ask more questions if you have any more that I can spend every minute. So I'm going to now move to the Korean history expert and professor of Korean history, as well as Korean Center for Korean Study Director, Schultz, Dr. Schultz.
Thanks, Amanda. Aloha, aloha kako, and annyeong hashimika. I'm representing the Korean American Foundation Hawaii, and I urge you, if you have time, to go look at our webpage, and that'll give you far more information with better pictures than what I'm providing right here. But it's a very easy webpage. It's called KA Foundation HI. So it stands for Korea Foundation Hawaii. So KA Foundation hi.org. So if you go there, you can find out an awful lot about our organization. We're actually a 501c3 with the whole idea to promote Korean culture, heritage, and history, especially in Hawaii. And we emerged out of the Centennial Committee that formed in 1999 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Korean immigration to Hawaii, which you probably have heard now by three of us. 2003 is it was the centennial year to mark the first arrival of Korean immigrants in 1903. And following the successful completion of that year-long celebration, we had funds left over, and we used those to form the Korean American Foundation Hawaii. And we were very blessed by. We had several great benefactors that helped us build up a pleasant endowment that now supports our various programs. And in June of 2004, we changed our name to the Korean American Foundation Hawaii. And we've been ever since then committed to expanding on and introducing and learning more about the Korean immigration, as well as Korean history and Korean culture. We every year sponsor a banquet to celebrate January 13th. That's the centennial year, and that's the 100th anniversary. That's when we celebrate Korean American Day. And we try to bring together various organizations from the Korean community together to celebrate that day. We work especially with the Korean Association of Hawaii, because they also want to celebrate it in a big way, and often will hold a luncheon, and then we'll return and hold a dinner. So if you're hungry on the 13th of January, look to both of our organizations for a good meal. We sponsor a number of monuments to commemorate the Korean immigration to Hawaii. There's a monument in Pa'a Inha Park over on King Street, which commemorates early immigration. We also have a plaque out at Puiki Cemetery, and I'm assuming most of you have never heard of it or never visited it, but it's over on the North Shore, and it's a cemetery that houses at least 30 or 35 early Korean immigrants who were often in plantations over on the windward side of the North Shore of Oahu. And it's a very picturesque site, and we feel it's one way to commemorate the earliest immigrants who came to Hawaii and are often forgotten. We also have supported a monument in Oahu Cemetery, which likewise houses many of the early immigrants who came to Hawaii in Honolulu. So we cover both North Shore, Pa'a Park, and Oahu Cemetery. In addition to that, the foundation has been active in establishing plaques on a number of historic sites placed throughout Honolulu. And if you ever want to do an adventure tour, we do have a list of the plaques, and you can walk around town and find out where these earliest Korean immigrant sites may be. And in fact, just at the beginning of this month, we, sponsored with a number of different organizations, had a walking tour that took you from one plaque to another, basically, to see where the earliest Korean immigrants had their schools, or had their associations, or had their newspapers. So it was a very informative way to walk and learn about early Korean history in Hawaii. We also early on supported the Korean Festival. We felt that was an important event that should rival the Okinawan Festival and a number of the other festivals. And we've continued to provide financial support to that. And the Korean Festival is now funded by foundation, headed by a foundation, and the head of the foundation is sitting just beside me, David Suh. So he may want to talk about that as well. But that was one of the early missions of the Korean American Foundation as well. In addition, we have what's called the Light of the Orient Donald C.W. Kim Award, which we give yearly at the banquet on January 13th to people in the Oahu Hawaiian community have contributed to the life and culture of the Korean community in Hawaii. We try to single out different people who have made outstanding contributions to Hawaii. It's just one more way to focus on individuals who are contributing to our culture, to Hawaii. And many of these people who have been given awards were really seen as role models for the Korean community. In addition, I should point out that we do, as I say, it is a foundation. We do have a small cache of money, which luckily the stock market is keeping healthy, and we give small grants out to different organizations, whether it's the Korean Artists Association, the Korean Sports Association, any number of small organizations that come in and asking for funding. And that's why it's important you go to look at our webpage, because that will tell you how to apply for grants from the foundation. Now, everybody, of course, is hoping to have that 1 million grant come through, but we don't go that much. Maybe think of about $1,000 or $2,000 as a more realistic type of grant. But I do urge you, if you're interested in trying to get some funding to support a particular organization or event, go look at our foundation. There is a webpage there that will tell you how to go about applying. In addition, we most recently, we helped celebrate the 80th anniversary of Korean liberation, and that happened on August 15th. We hosted a banquet to honor the descendants of the earliest patriots, and we had roughly 100 different people who can trace their lineage back to these early patriots who were fighting for Korean independence, and it was a very, very important and meaningful time. I'm trying to look at the clock, and I think I still have 5 minutes to go, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to yield it to David Suh, who is the president of the Korean Association of Hawaii, otherwise known as TUKA. David.
Thank you, Ned. Welcome, everyone. Aloha. Good evening. 안녕하세요. I'm David Suh. I'm the president of the United Korean Association of Hawaii. I just want to say again how grateful I am to see all of you here this evening. It really means a lot when our community can come together, not just to celebrate, but also to remember, to learn, and to share stories that matter to us. Now, I could take all night to talk about the history of our organizations, the things that we do, the projects, the programs that we run on a daily basis and a periodic and seasonal basis. There are too many to mention, but I'd really like to focus on how we've been partnering with the National Park Services to share and preserve and spread the history of Honouliuli. So many of you may not have known about Honouliuli, and for me, myself, until a few months ago, I certainly did not know about Koreans who, during World War II, ended up as prisoners of war right here in Hawaii at Honouliuli internment camp. When people hear Honouliuli, they often think only about the Japanese Americans who were interned there. But tucked away in that history are the stories of Koreans, stories that for decades were almost completely forgotten. So at our organization, we've been working closely with the National Park Services to make sure that this part of the history isn't lost again. And I want to share with you tonight 3 things that we did this year to bring these stories back to life. So I'm sure all of you should be able to see some photographs on the screen. So the first thing we did to remember the history of Honouliuli was at the Korean Festival, as Ned mentioned. August 2nd, we hosted, organized, helped put together a Korean Festival, the 21st annual Korean Festival. And you know how big and lively it can get, food, music, dance, culture, and everything. So in this year, in the middle of all the fun, our association sponsored an informational booth about Honouliuli. So thousands of people saw the booth and many stopped by. And I'm sure many commented to themselves and to others, wait, there were Koreans imprisoned here in Hawaii during World War II. So many had no idea. For some, it was almost shocking. But I'm pretty sure they walked away with a new piece of knowledge about our shared history. And to me, that's powerful, because when you connect culture with history, people really remember it. And the second thing that we did, as also Ned mentioned, the 80th anniversary of the Liberation Day ceremony on August 15. So that day is so meaningful for all of Koreans. It marks the end of colonial rule, the day Korea regained independence. At our ceremony this year, with about 180 people in attending, we included the history of Honouliuli. And it did really hit home. Because Liberation Day isn't just about waving flags or singing ceremonial songs. It's really about remembering the sacrifices and struggles, and also the complicated stories of people who got caught up in forces bigger than themselves. So bringing up Honouliuli on that day helped us remember that independence wasn't free, and that even far away from Korea, here in Hawaii, our people were living through those struggles too. And the third thing that we have done this year is the permanent storyboard at our Cultural Community Center. So we have the Cultural Community Center, the building in Makiki District Park on Keamoku Street. And on the third floor, this one is I'm very especially proud of, because events come and go, but now we have something lasting. If you walk into our center, you will see a display about Honouliuli. It tells a story in pictures and words, and it will be there for generations to come. A school kid, a visitor can come in and learn. A newcomer to our community can learn. Even our own children and grandchildren, when they visit, they can learn about the history. And so that's how we keep history alive, not just for today, but permanently. I would like to pause here now and tell you the story that really captures the heart of this history about Honouliuli, and it really captures my attention. It's about 3 young Koreans during World War II. You see in the picture, named Lee Chong-sil, 31 years old, Park Hyung-moo, 24 years old, and Park Sun-dong, 25 years old. They were conscripted. They were forced into Japanese army. But they did not volunteer to fight in the war. They didn't have a choice, but managed to escape and surrender to Allied forces, the US forces. And they agreed to risk their lives and be trained to become special military operatives for US. But here's a tragic twist. Even though they were trained, they were still locked up at Honouliuli as prisoners. You can imagine the frustration, having skills, having hope, but still behind the barbed wire. So to their great disappointment, they ended up at Honouliuli. And this is where the story changes from tragedy to inspiration. Instead of sitting there bitter and angry, instead of giving up, these 3 young Koreans decided to use what they had to serve others. So inside the camp, they volunteered. They taught classes, they educated other prisoners, they worked to keep peace and order in the camp. They gave of themselves without being asked, without being paid, without knowing if anyone would even remember them. And you know what? Because of their efforts, many prisoners were uplifted. We have a story about them really positively influencing other prisoners. And some learned skills that they never had before. Others found a little hope in a dark place. That is a lesson I want to keep it in my heart. So history isn't just about dates and names. It's not just something we memorize for tests or write in a textbook. The real meaning of history is in the choices people made and how we can follow these examples today. So as my organization is so big on volunteerism and serving others, serving underprivileged populations, and doing all these nice things, I need to think about these 3 young Koreans. And they didn't have freedom. They didn't have power. They didn't have justice, but still they found a way to make life better for others. And so that's the kind of lesson that speaks directly to us and to me right now. And today we live in freedom. We are not behind fences or barbed wire, but we face other challenges, divisions in our communities, challenges of homelessness, the challenges of the economy, and people being isolated, young people struggling with direction, older generations feeling forgotten. And the question to myself, to me, and to my organization and others is, how do we respond? And if we take inspiration from these men at Honouliuli, the answer becomes clear. So we volunteer, we give, we teach, we support, and we just don't focus on what's unfair and what's missing. We look at what we can do right where we are and for the people around us. And so that's why preserving history really matters to us and to my organization, because it's not just about looking backward, it's about learning how to live today. So I hope when you hear about Honouliuli, you don't just think, oh, that's an interesting piece of history. But rather than that, I hope you can think that, what can I do? How can I serve? And how can I give of myself like those 3 young Koreans did? So if we can all do that, then their story, the story of Honouliuli, will live on, not just in a museum, not just on a storyboard, but in the way that we live our lives. So that to me is a real power of history, the real appreciation of what the National Park Service is doing to preserve and promote and promote the story of Honouliuli. And that's the reason why we are so glad and we are privileged to partner and work together with the National Park Services. That is to find the purpose in preserving the history. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, David, I'm so glad you ended the panel session with your presentation, because I could not have said it better myself about the mission of the National Park Service. This is exactly why it's important to work together with communities, with partners like yourself, to preserve this history, to ensure that people's pain and suffering, we have lessons learned from that it's not for naught. And that this history is relevant for our lives today, and the lessons that we can learn for those that were held at Honouliuli. So thank you for closing out the panel session with such a thoughtful connection and the points that you made. And so before I open it up to the rest of the folks on this call, who I'm sure have a lot of questions for all 4 of you, I do want to reiterate my thanks for sharing what you did with your organizations and how each of you are supporting working with us to conserve this important history. I think, Chris, you mentioned a potential student symposium in the future. I think, Ed, you were a little humble about your organization and how it supported Honouliuli. One of those grants that your organization gave was to the park to be able to translate the Korean names of all the Korean POWs that were held at Honouliuli, and you can find that on the park's website as well. So your grant helped us to do that. And Amanda, you talked about the future potential of a site that, like David's, could be a potential history location that people can learn about. You talked a lot about the independence movement, and we know for a fact that many of the Korean prisoners of war continue to write back to their countries to promote independence from Japan, and also had a newsletter that they wrote while they were at Honouliuli for the camp that talked a lot about promoting independence and what the prisoners of war could do to continue to promote that effort and movement from Honouliuli directly itself. So I just want to thank all of you for your wonderful collaboration and partnership to help support and conserve this important history, to make it relevant to our communities today and bring it forward to educate more people and provide those opportunities. So with that, I definitely want to leave the time we have remaining together tonight this evening to encourage folks to ask any questions they might have of our wonderful panelists this evening, who've shared a lot about what they do and how they work within the local Korean community. So you can either, I think, unmute yourself or put yourself on maybe submit your questions in the chat as well, or directly to myself or the panelists as well. Okay, I have one to me I'm looking at. Several folks mentioned that they were surprised to learn about the history, that there were Korean POWs in Hawaii at Honouliuli. Can you talk a little bit about what, when you learned about this, what was so surprising? Why were you surprised to learn about this history, and how did you yourselves learn about this history at Honouliuli?
Actually, I was at a meeting out near your office about 10 years ago, when there were three of us from the Korean community who were asked to attend. And it was primarily sponsored by the Japanese Cultural Center of Hawaii. And many of the many many of our cohort Japanese Americans were shocked when they heard there were so many Koreans. And to them, it had been long a celebration of Japanese Americans who were interned there. And they just had no idea that the Koreans in numbers ultimately outnumbered them. But that really brought it home to that we're a community in Hawaii, and we all have this history that relates back to Honolulu as well as many other things.
And I briefly mentioned about just only about a few months ago that I learned about this history, and it wasn't a big event. It was just a friend of our organization who was holding a class of Oriental chess, the Go class. He came up to us and, hey, by the way, the National Park Services is trying to find and recruit Korean organizations to share this story in the community. And what story? What Honouliuli camp? I thought they were just Japanese internment camp. So it just came to me as a complete shock. And from that moment on, and my intrigue and my interest in history, and again, the lessons we can learn from that history brought forward the desire to learn more about it and to share the story with the rest of the community members.
Great, thank you. I mean, I think we actually didn't even mention the numbers. So there were about, over the 3-year history that the camp was open, 1943 and closed in 1947, it was about 2,700 Korean POWs. So when you talk about the numbers and outnumbering the U.S. citizens and residents held at Honolulu, yes, absolutely, there was a large amount of Korean POWs there. I see we have some questions in the chat, so I'll move on to those. What resources can you all possibly share to learn about Korean history, and in particular about incarceration?
Yeah, actually, I would recommend you turn into the next Zoom with both Mary Daniko and Ducky Motobayashi. Both of them have been working much more focused on this whole issue. Chris is an anthropologist. I'm a historian of 12th century. David's a lawyer. Amanda's a lawyer. And so our bread and butter doesn't come out of working on Honouliuli, but there's many ways we can support the project.
I guess one thing I can add is that we all talked about Korean independence movement happening in Hawaii. And basically from 1910 to 1945, 35 years, Korea did not have a sovereignty. So Koreans were not Korean nation's citizens, but rather considered Japanese. So they were recruited as Japanese, they're conscripted, They're recruited as Japanese soldiers, and they fought in the Manchuria, China, Russia, and also on behalf of Japanese military. And that's the very reason why they became a prisoner of war, not by choice. They didn't select to be interned at the Honouliuli. They were prisoner of the war, not by choice, but by recruited by the Japanese government. That's what it is.
Yeah, and that actually goes directly to answer Angela's question. I'm always saying in terms of resources, if you go to the park's website, nps.gov/HONO, we do actually have information specifically about all the POWs that were held there, and we do have information about the Korean POWs. So that is one place to start if you're looking for some resources. Joy shares that she'd love to see more events like this, but in person, where different Korean organizations come together to discuss and learn from each other. Certainly, I think we have a lot of many of those organization leadership here on this call. So maybe in the future, like Chris is holding a student symposium, maybe this is a symposium in the future for other Korean organizations to come together as well. So Angela asked, how were Koreans or Korean Americans selected to go to Honouliuli? Were they mainly POWs, or were there specific groups that were targeted, like the Japanese American community? So those incarcerated at Honouliuli were Korean POWs. As Amanda said, they were forced to support the Japanese army because their country was occupied by Japan. So that was how, as the Americans made their way through the Pacific Front, arresting prisoners of war, that's kind of how the Koreans made their way to Honouliuli. I will also say that Honouliuli was a predominantly POW camp, but it was not the only POW camp during the World War II in the islands. There were actually 12 other POW camps. 2 were on the Big Island, and the rest of them were on Oahu. And so I am still learning about the other POW camps. So must admit, I don't know if Korean POWs were held at these other POW camps in the then territory of Hawaii. But there were also other POW camps as well. So Korean Americans were not sent to Honouliuli as prisoners. It was Koreans from Korea. However, an interesting part of the story at Honouliuli to further investigate and tell is that there were Korean American soldiers that oversaw the camp. So I myself am a second generation Japanese Americans, and I know Japanese American soldiers oversaw Honouliuli, and I can only think how strange it would be for me to point a gun at my fellow Japanese Americans or first generation Japanese, both on the American side and the POW side. So I think that's an area of potential research and investigation to learn more about these Korean American soldiers that were charged with guarding Honouliuli and these Korean POWs, which they also helped with some translation as well. So that's another area of opportunity for research. And again, going back to Mary's talk, she may talk a little bit about this, is through her research that the park has funded. She came across this as well. So
And there's
Angela,
also the
uh-huh.
And there's also the fact that a number of people in the Korean community in Hawaii went out to the camp, and I think
Yes.
there were a number of religious groups that became involved in trying to help.
Correct. And thank you for bringing that up. And hopefully Ducky will be able to share that information as well. Yeah, it's interesting because, because of the sugar plantation days, Korean immigrants were brought to work the sugar plantations. So there was a really healthy local Korean community from that immigration history to Oahu as well, that, as Ned shared, did interact with the Korean POWs and tried to help support them while they were held at Honouliuli. So Angela, I hope that answers your question. So I'm looking at the clock, and we have a couple more minutes. So I will maybe take at this point a minute to close us out for the evening, to thank everybody again for joining us. And definitely want to also recognize hidden behind this panel session is Pacific Historic Parks, which is the park's nonprofit that helps to support and host these virtual speaker series. So definitely thanks to Pacific Historic Parks. You don't see them in the background, but Taylor and Kiana have been managing the talk tonight and ensuring that we have a smooth presentation. So thanks to you both. I also just want to tee up really quickly our September events. It's National Literacy Month. So we are going to feature a lot of book events focused on authors, Japanese American descendants, for folks who were held at Honouliuli, have several books that they have published. So we'll have events at the shop, Barnes and Nobles, Native Books, and also Bishop Museum, as well for many of these events. So I will put that in the chat for folks to check it out. So just teeing up some things to look forward to in September. But again, want to thank all the panelists for all of you joining on this lovely Tuesday evening. We hope you learned a lot. I know I did. I had no idea Hawaii played such a gateway to Korean immigration into the U.S. And played such a pivotal role for independence movement in Korea. So I know I learned a lot. So thank you for sharing your mana'o this evening with all of us, and definitely look forward to continuing to work with you to preserve this history, as David mentioned, of why it's so important to do so. So mahalo to everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone.